All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking to Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. Post-National Signing Day for the Auburn Tigers. Always great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Hopefully you guys tune in. Let's get the comment section active. Very appreciative for all of the support. Definitely check out other Auburn content creators, including my buddies over at War Rapport, who did a really good show last night with JG Tate. I thought that was a very good video, a very good live stream to follow up a very non-eventful, but if you kind of dig into you kind of dig into the rubbish a little bit and kind of take your eyes off of recruiting rankings and how guys are, as far as the stars, the 2s, the 3s, and all those. Now, as an Auburn Tiger, you kind of have to say this kind of stuff, and it's not necessarily sunshine pumping, but it's really reality. Not in recent history, Auburn has just had a plethora of 5-star recruits. Yes, you look over to Tuscaloosa, just pick and choose. It's 5-star university. And Alabama is going to continue to be a very difficult football team to beat. But as an Auburn Tiger, as an SEC football team, you really got to look at what your brand is going to be. And you got to look at what makes you successful, not based on what's happening in Tuscaloosa, but what's going to make you successful as a good football team. And I think that's something that Bryan Harsin is definitely, that's why I'm kind of glad Auburn didn't go within the SEC for a coach, because the SEC coaches are not, I wouldn't think that they were necessarily afraid of Nick Saban, but I think they have this thing to where they feel like they have to do this special thing in order to compete. Just go in and play your game. Either they're going to beat the shit out of you or not. Alabama's now here's what I'm not going to do. This is not a video about Alabama per se. But when it comes to recruiting, you can't discount how many consecutive years under Nick Saban these guys have been able to recruit at an epic level. Now, back to Auburn. We post National Signing Day. I think Auburn did a pretty decent job, as they usually do, at recruiting for the skill position. Got quarterback Demartrius Davis, got a few safeties, receivers, the stuff that seems to be easy to analyze. But where Auburn has really dropped the ball on themselves is their inability to properly analyze talent along the offensive line. And you can't really be lazy with your analysis of talent at the offensive line. And judging, I actually went back because JG Tate made some pretty good points last night. And I went back and looked at a little video footage on the offensive line and looked at especially the left tackle position. Now, left tackle is arguably one of the most crucial portions of the offensive line, especially for a right-handed quarterback. I'm going to tell you why. If you are a right-handed quarterback, typically when you drop back and pass, your back is turned to the left. That means the left is your blind spot. So the offensive lineman that you have to have the utmost trust in is your left tackle. Where has Auburn struggled? Mightily at left tackle. I was looking at the Georgia game yesterday. Actually, I was looking at it this morning, a portion of it. And just getting whooped at a certain point. It got to the point, I can't remember whether it was Nick Brahms or not, but he got away with holding, but after a while, he just kind of, that's all he could do was hold the guy. And another thing that really hurts Auburn with their current state of football players on the offensive line is the fact that the SEC, especially teams like Texas A&M, teams like LSU for the most part, Georgia, Alabama, and especially Florida as well, they have some really good edge rushers. that can cause some just straight up anxiety for offensive tackles. And then counter that with the fact that Auburn isn't necessarily stellar at the guard center and the other guard is either. You see where the chaos is coming from. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, there were times where Bo prematurely left the pocket. But when you have this accustomation of chaos, at times you don't even know if the pocket is formed or not because you're so used to running for your life. Now, I think this will be a good opportunity this year, especially with Bryan Harsin. We're going to see how this development thing works out. Development is the name of the game under the Bryan Harsin era. You cannot get through a presser with Bryan Harsin without hearing about development, which I think is a really, really good thing. And the reason why I think he could probably pull this off is because at Boise State, I would imagine, is a pretty hard place to recruit. And to be fair, this brand thing has been going around. If Boise State probably didn't have the Nike brand and the blue football field and all that other stuff, it probably would be an absolute disaster to get kids to come to Boise State. Not to mention some of the history that they've had, especially beating Oklahoma a few years back and blah, blah, blah. So one thing I like about the Bryan Harsin possibility in the future is the fact that he's been in a place where it's been difficult to recruit pretty good players. So, especially with his recruiting coordinator, and I see why he brought him with him. I mean, they've had to really dig and claw to get good recruits. And if they bring that same energy to the SEC, I think they will be relatively successful enough to compete at a high level. Because there's a lot of recruits to go around, but it's very competitive. Where Auburn is located, surrounded by University of Alabama, Troy University, Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Troy University. Then you factor in some of the local FCS schools, Division II schools like Tuskegee, Alabama State. It's a lot of schools around Auburn that they have to compete with from a recruiting standpoint. Got Florida State 2 or 3 hours, about 3 hours away. LSU not too far. Then you got the Mississippi schools at the border. So I think, in order to be able to recruit at a high level, not necessarily, you're not only competing against the Southeastern Conference, you're competing against portions of the ACC. You're competing against also teams that, that you're probably not even thinking about, like UAB, who was about to have a new football stadium. They're upgrading their facilities. A guy on the fence, probably good enough, but probably don't want to play in the SEC. Hey, let me take my show to UAB. I'll probably still go to the NFL. Probably last a little bit longer because my body won't be beat down from rigorous play in the SEC. That's just a hypothesis, though. Nothing solidified about that. I think, though, development is going to definitely be key, not only to these new recruits that aren't necessarily from an average rating just jumping off the sheet, but I think this is a good, really good opportunity to kind of love what you got, to really sharpen some of the skills of the guys that are there. How much better do you think Smoke Monday will play with a little bit better technique, with a little bit more development and training? How much bigger, and maybe even counter the speed as well with Owen Popo? I mean, he needs to be a little bit bigger, but maintain the speed. I think Jacoby McClain, I was actually looking at this again in the Georgia game, and I'm like, they're just pushing these guys out of the way. They're not big enough. They got the skill, they're just not big enough. They're not strong enough. And Georgia pretty much manhandled these guys all over the football field. And that's where your strength and conditioning coach comes in. See, all these off the field support staff positions, that's the stuff that really makes these players, as far as physique, what they are. Making sure these kids have a proper diet. Just think about it. When you're in high school, all you do is sit around. You playing at a high level now, but pretty much all you're doing is sitting around eating Doritos and those little jelly rolls from that Little Debbie cakes and all that other stuff. But you're still able to play pretty much at a high level. You're not eating the proper vegetables. You're not training yourself properly because in high school, I mean, most high schools, I mean, it could be different now. I haven't done my research on it, but most high school teams, at least from the 3A on down, don't really have like a solid big time weight program like that. Now, if you get into the Prattville's and the Central Phoenix cities who are legitimately preparing, not saying that the 2As and 3As are not, but these are feeder programs to Power 5 football teams. So, of course, I think they're going to do a little different with the strength and conditioning to get the guys prepared as they are pipelines to Power 5 and upper echelon FBS football teams. But I think Auburn, as we talk about this recruiting class, the biggest key you got to think about is development, opportunity. Just because the guys aren't a 5-star don't mean it can work out. One of y'all's favorite player right now, Roger McCreary, was not a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Auburn actually has 2 secondary personnel that will be playing in the Super Bowl. For one, Carlton Davis was not a 5-star recruit out of high school. He was actually a 4-star, .88. So you can't tell me that guys can't develop. Now, don't get me wrong. Typically, 5-stars tend to transfer a little bit quicker. Their skill set usually does. But it's still somewhat up for debate. I say from a roster building standpoint, the diamonds in the rough, or not the diamonds in the rough, but the roster builders are between your 97s and your 87s. That's where your roster is built. Of course, that's where most of your players are going to fall in. And if you can get some pretty decent skill players in that realm, you're pretty much good to go. All right, guys, that's my time here at the CardCast. Really enjoyed talking to you guys about Auburn football. The future is positive. I wouldn't say the future is necessarily bright because that just remains to be seen. But I do think Bryan Harsin brings a sensibility that gives you confidence that he's going to try to put the kids in the best position to be successful and put the program in the best possible position to be successful. Let's light this comment section up. Got a few more weeks and Auburn will be getting ready for spring football. We definitely the conversation is not going to end. We're just getting started. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to Burn and Speak Sports Auburn. As always, great to be an Auburn Tiger. War Eagle.